So moving on to commissioner comments.
Even though I wasn't able to attend the retirement party for Chief Alicia Welch, I was able to attend the presentation at the City Council, and I thought they had a reception as well as a presentation, and once again, just reminding us of all the accomplishments that Chief Welch had during the time she was with the department, with recruitment efforts, and especially with the girls' camp, and being a role model for women to ultimately become firefighters. And I thought it was a very moving ceremony.
Oh, very good. Good morning. I did attend the retirement for Chief Welch. It was very well attended. It was, and I must remember to say the food was wonderful. I was told her mother would be listening. The food was wonderful. There was lots of food there and lots of great people, and it was a very good way to send her off on her way to Colorado. And we really appreciate the work she did with that recruitment department, especially for the bringing the youth program into some almost organized position that we can be able to move with. So that was, and she did a lot of other things, but I always told her she seemed like she was on a roller coaster, and I realized why now, because she knew she had an end date, and we didn't really know about it. I'd also like to offer my condolences to the department and to the family of Kelly Wong. It was a very sad incident that happened in our department, and it's even sadder for me because I remember watching him get his badge at 40s, and it's so young. It was very, very moving and disturbing for me to realize that someone's kind of like you bring them in and you see them go like quickly. It was very disturbing. And also I went to the Hope for Firefighters, which was really, this year they had too many good foods. It was just like you should have it more than one day, because there were like 5 or 6 different things that you just couldn't taste all of them. But I did have Freddy's pulled pork, which was wonderful. And then I went down and had Fire Station 9's prime, their beef. I forgot which cut it is, but it's beef, barbecued beef. And it was very good, very good. So, and, you know, just snacking along the way, and everybody wants you to eat. But I understand they did raise lots of money. It was a great event to help the Widows and Orphans Fund. And so anybody in the audience who's listening and hasn't contributed could contribute to that fund, because it is a fund that's in need of support, and it is a good thing to have.
So I would just join with, just the fire family and the loss of Kelly Wong. I think we all sort of feel that. And so, and your words were well stated. Thanks.
Yes, agreed. It's a difficult weekend, I know, for a lot of people. Quick thank you to Fire Station 81's had me out there for lunch a couple of weeks back. They treated me right, so thanks to them. I was also happy to be able to be at Chief Welch's retirement, and she got a great send-off. I know she is probably happily in Colorado by now, so certainly wish her the best. Thanks.
Report of the Fire Chief.
Thank you, Madam President. May 17th, we had our annual Civilian Recognition Luncheon at Frank Hodgkin Training Center. And this year, our top awardee was Claire O'Deal, retired management analyst out of Metro Fire Communications. Then we had 3 employees of the year: Alexandra Vasquez Sherman from PSD, Isaac Turner from the shops, and Rosa Mercado from the training division. These people do amazing and outstanding work, and we don't recognize their contributions enough. This is a great event, and we'll continue to do that. On May 18th, I represented Mayor Garcetti at the Cathedral of Our Lady of Angels. We talked about earthquake preparedness to a group of business representatives from throughout the city. May 21st to the 24th, I attended an EMS conference and came back with some good ideas how we can treat and do not transport and receive revenue. So we're pursuing that as we speak. Dr. Eckstein is on top of that. I also attended the Hope for Firefighters event, very successful. They annually raise around $100,000 or so in one day. It's a great event, very well attended. That night was Chief Welch's retirement dinner. It was very well attended, and I didn't know her reach of people that she knew until I went to that dinner, because she really created some strong relationships and set the platform for Chief Kepner to continue her work in recruitment. Last night was the California Fire Foundation annual Firefighter Appreciation Night at Dodger Stadium. We had a moment of silence and a nice video program for firefighter Wong. We had our firefighter Hartwell, who we recognize here in commission, throw the first pitch. And I try to give him some tips because I am a proven first pitch thrower down the middle. It may not be 100 miles an hour, but it went down the middle. And he reassured me there would be no problem because he was a college pitcher. And he was firing fastballs on the sidelines. But when the pressure was on, he threw it outside about 4 feet from the plate. So I told him, hey, did you have fun? It was fun, right? So that was the takeaway. I was very proud of him. I didn't rub it in. Still today. I did not. Well, he's not here, so I'm wasting those shots. You guys, hopefully if you see him, you can pass that on. Great guy, very well deserved, and he represented the department very, very well. Then on a somber note, yesterday morning, of course, was the procession for Kelly. Very proud of our people. It was a true sign of respect to Kelly, his family, the surgeons, the doctors, the nurses at County USC, an amazing team, very, very smart, empathetic. Dr. Eckstein was a great liaison as an employee there. He was able to gain access for information that we otherwise would not have had. Very proud of our people. Very sad and tragic. The CERT team is investigating all the circumstances. We did post a blue sheet yesterday afternoon, and we made sure to get it to the family first, and then the Fire Station 92, Fire Station 9, and then we disseminated it throughout the department. So there'll be a more in-depth report coming, but we thought it was critical that we get something out right away. We must never forget that firefighting is a very, very dangerous job, and we have to always think about safety, safety, safety. That concludes my report.
Well, Madam President, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Stacy Gerlich also represented LAFD and the EMS division last night at the baseball game.
Great, thanks. Now we have verbal report of the department on significant incidents from May 16th to June 5th of this year.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chief Terrazas, City Attorney, Trevor Richmond, Deputy Chief, Commander, Operations Valley Bureau. I have two incidents that occurred in the Valley Bureau, and surprisingly, they happened on the same day, May 25th. The first incident, I'll discuss both incidents, and I'm going to show a very short video. The first incident was at 3859 North Sherwood Place. This was a 4-story descending hillside home. Very difficult fire for us to fight. All told, we had 31 fire companies on scene with a knockdown of the main body of fire within 40 minutes. Very good coordination of all fire resources on scene, and I'll point that out in the video as I show it. The second incident occurred later that evening at 13645 West Van Owen. This was a single-story, common attic, L-shaped mini mall where we had significant fire in the attic. All told, we had 30 fire companies on scene of this incident, and it took just slightly over 1 hour to get a knockdown on the main body of fire. Of interesting to note on this particular fire was the fact that it had false storefronts and was actually shielding a marijuana grow operation, something very unusual that we're looking into a lot deeper in the valley now since this incident. So if we could just run the short videos, they'll run concurrent. This is the first fire, and I want you to pay particular note to the storefront signs. Those are all false. The fire occurred in the back corner at the turn of the building, primarily in the attic. You can see that by not a lot of smoke coming out from the storefronts. We had air conditioners collapse in on the roof, but what we found in there was a marijuana grow operation, pretty substantive marijuana grow operation. This is the Hillside home, and I want you to pay particular attention to the proximity of the brush against the structure and how the firefighters were able to keep this extensive fire from spreading to the adjacent brush. Very difficult fire to fight, very well coordinated by the on-scene incident commander, and we were able to contain that fire to the point of origin. That completes my report for Valley Bureau. If there's any questions, I can answer those.
Thank you. So, any other verbal significant incidents?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam President, members of the board, Chief Terrazas, Ms. Rafish, Deputy Chief Charles Butler, Operations West Bureau, and I do have 2 incidents of significance to report on that occurred in West Bureau. The first occurred at LAX, and it was on Saturday, May 20th, and it involved a Boeing 737-800 that struck a service vehicle on a taxiway where the service roads intersect with the taxiway. 2 ARF resources were dispatched. ARF is our aircraft rescue firefighting vehicles. 2 of those were dispatched on an unknown type incident, categorized as a normal dispatch at LAX. Upon arrival, they found that the aircraft had struck the service vehicle, and the service vehicle was on its side with people trapped inside. The ARF resources worked quickly to secure the aircraft, ensure that there was no fuel spill and there were no issues relative to the aircraft. They also requested fire and EMS resources to deal with the multi-casualty incident in the service truck. There were 8 people in the service truck, 2 that required extrication, as I mentioned. All were transported to the hospital with minor injuries. And what's really significant, although 8 people at the airport may not seem like a lot of victims, the complexity of any incident at LAX is just tremendous. If you think about it, an airport is laid out with signage and road markings for pilots sitting 20, 30 feet up in the air in their cockpit. So for a firefighter operating in a ground vehicle trying to navigate the airfield with the volume of air traffic on the runways and the taxiways, the number of service vehicles, LAX is a city unto itself, so it makes any incident there very complicated and challenging for our people. The next incident was a brush fire that occurred in Mandeville Canyon on May 28th. And it was in the afternoon hours when typically we've had some daytime heating impacting the brush. We did have warm temperatures that day. However, for the most part, the weather was in our favor. Resources responded to the 2700 block of Mandeville Canyon Road. And first report was a little less than 1 acre of brush burning on the east side of the canyon. There were homes threatened, and we did have to temporarily evacuate 5 structures. We had assistance from our counterparts in LA County Fire with their aircraft and their hand crews, along with engine companies from Beverly Hills, Culver City, and Santa Monica. We were able to hold the fire to 55 acres. No structures were damaged, and it took approximately 1 day to fully contain the fire. That concludes my report, unless there's any questions.
Thank you. So now we have verbal report by the medical director for the same time period.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Mark Eckstein, Medical Director and EMS Bureau Commander. Significant EMS incident since the last Fire Commission meeting on June 2nd at approximately 10:40 hours in Fire Station 64's first end. There was a multiple victim shooting resulting in 4 victims with gunshot wounds, including 2 criticals, 1 minor, 1 who was pronounced on scene. The criticals and the minor were transported to area trauma centers. On Sunday, June 4th, about 11:30 p.m., there was a multiple victim traffic accident in 14's first inn with 5 patients, all of whom apparently were ejected, and all of whom were transported to County USC Medical Center. And of course, I would be remiss, the most significant EMS incident on Saturday, June 3rd, incident 458 at 4th and Main, where firefighter Kelly Wong tragically fell from the aerial ladder, sustaining catastrophic injuries, and despite the heroic efforts of his colleagues on scene and staff at LA County USC Medical Center, he succumbed to his injuries yesterday. That concludes my report.
Thank you. So moving on to presentations.
Good morning, Commissioners,
Good
Fire
morning.
Chief Terraza, City Attorney Acela. First, we'd like to introduce Fire Chief Ralph Terrazas to speak. We have 4 presentations. The first 2 are in reference to Chief Officer promotions, after of which we have 2 separate presentations as well.
If I could have Chief McKnight and his family please come up to the podium. We do have 2 promotions that we're going to recognize this morning. And the first one, I'm proud to say, is the promotion of Antoine McKnight. We're promoting Antoine from Battalion Chief to Assistant Chief. And I'll cover some of his accomplishments, and then we will let his wife pin his badge. The first thing I have to say is that I actually didn't know Antoine, but we have a colorful history in high school. I played for Banning, 8-time city champs, football champs. And in one season, we played against Monroe. That was the team that Chief McKnight played for. I don't think they've ever won a city championship. But the first time Antoine brought it up, I said, I don't remember playing against you, Antoine. He was a defensive back. Can you believe that? He was a defensive back. Maybe that's why we blew him out. So I said, Antoine, get on the ground and go like this. Maybe I'll recognize you. So that's been our running joke for the last 30 years. But Antoine is a class act, born in Los Angeles. His college experience, he graduated from National University, Coastline Community College. He's a teacher at West LA Junior College. He promoted to Captain 1 in 98, a Captain 2 in 03, a Battalion Chief in 08. And I believe I was your Assistant Chief when you first made Battalion Chief. He has been involved with the youth academies for several years. And the number of kids that you've touched, Chief, I don't know if you've kept track, but I keep the picture that you gave me of all the recruits or the kids from that one class. It must be in the thousands. So it's through his efforts we've made a positive impact on many, many kids from the city. Most recently, he was detailed to Ontario Airport, and he did an outstanding job there. And I thought it was a tremendous growth opportunity to, in a sense, you were the fire chief of the Ontario Fire Department. So I think that was great preparation for you to assume your new rank. He was also, I ran into Antoine at a soccer game. My youngest son was playing in a league, and I think it was your daughter was playing down in Orange County someplace, San Diego. And they didn't get to play against each other. If they did, I'd be bragging about that, but they didn't. And maybe your daughter's team might have beat my son's team. Maybe. So I saw Antoine involved at that level as a coach, so he does it all. We do have his beautiful wife, Audrey, here with us today. Daughters Jamila, Ayana, and Chikure. Thank you for being here. Your mother, Verdell Scott. With that, a sister, Kathleen. Hello, Kathleen. Thank you for being here. With that, what I think we'll do next is allow your wife to pin your badge, or your daughter, and then we'll give the mic to Chief McKnight. Can we get pictures, David? It's all yours, Chief. Congratulations. Well done.
I think the chief is still suffering from amnesia after I hit him in that game. No, I want to take this opportunity to thank all you guys, everyone. Thank you, Chief, for this opportunity, and thank each and every one of you in this room, because basically we all gain from each other's experience and knowledge. So all you guys have contributed to me, so I want to thank you for that. I want to thank my mom. She just turned 85. She's hanging in there, still here supporting me, so I want to thank her for being here. My big sister, Kathleen. My mom had 12 children. I'm number 10 of 12, and so I don't know, even remember how many grandchildren she had. I think it's over 100 right now. And then I also want to thank my wife and for all her support all these years, because as the chief said, I know I'm busy doing a lot of different things. So, and I want to thank my daughter. She just graduated from high school, going to Alabama A&M. So thank you all for your opportunity. I appreciate it.
Now can I have Chief Crowley's family up to the podium? Chief Crowley. She grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I know she's a Green Bay Packer fan. We haven't broke her of that habit yet. We probably never will. In '93, she came to L.A. following her Bachelor of Science in Biology from St. Mary's College, which is near Notre Dame, Indiana. In terms of her education, she has a master's in organizational leadership from Woodbury University. She's got her bachelor's from St. Mary's, a graduate of the National Fire Academy Executive Fire Officer Program, and she is a paramedic. She also is taught in our Leadership Academy. She was hired by the LAFD in 1999, and she promoted to engineer in 2003, fire inspector in 2007, captain 1 in 2007, captain 2 in 2012, battalion chief in 2013, and assistant chief in 2016. Her list of projects is long, so I'll skip that part. She's been very involved, just like Antoine, with youth academies, and several times before I was appointed, and you were a captain someplace. She invited me down to her Harbor Drill Tower Academy, Youth Academy. And another example of somebody reaching literally thousands of kids and being a positive example to them. She is here with her partner, Holland, whom I've known forever, her 3 daughters, Clarissa, age 10, Madison, age 8, and Grace, age 6. Chief Crowley is the highest ranking. She currently is the highest ranking female chief officer as an assistant chief. She continues to be the highest ranking female in the rank of deputy chief. She's done an amazing job, and not only in PSD, where she left, but as well as the Fire Prevention Bureau, along with the assistance of Chief Harvey and her team of inspectors in the Fire Prevention Bureau. So, Chief Crowley, I'll have Holland pin the badge, and we'll take pictures. I now present to you Deputy Chief Fire Marshal Chief Crowley.
You can go sit. Somebody doesn't like the limelight, I think. Thank you, Chief, very much. You know, you think about our current times where we've lost one of our members, and it really forces you to be reflective. It's a celebration, obviously, but it's also a time to reflect on those individuals who have touched our lives. And each day, it's a reminder is precious, our time with our family, our time at work, and it really forces me, and I hope it forces all of us to pay attention when these things happen. So be grateful, and I'm very, very grateful for each and every day. So talking about being grateful, obviously family first. I always say that. That's my mantra, no matter what, family, family first. And you all got to see my beautiful family, Holland and the girls. I know that both Holland and I are raising our little ones to understand no matter what they put their minds and hearts into, they can accomplish. And I know we wake up each and every day to be better for each other and for our girls. So thank you for the support and the encouragement at home. I wouldn't be here without that, obviously. So thank you for that, and I love you all for that. What I'd like to focus on next is the other individuals. There's so many people, if you reflect back on your careers, of who actually touches your lives that can impact you to actually push you forward. And there's so many people within this organization, too many to mention. But from my third house as a probationary firefighter, a TFC, a captain, sat me down and said, Kristen, you can, as a probationary firefighter, mind you, said, you can do whatever you want on this organization. It's yours. And I thought, wow, this is an incredible place to be for a Captain 2 at Fire Station 11 to sit me down and say that to me. And that was the start of this whole journey. So fast forward to the number of individuals within my life who were able to literally take me by the hand and show me the way, to pulling me up where now I'm their peer, to pushing me on their shoulders and propelling me forward. There's so many people that have done that, but specifically two, which we talked about, which was Battalion Chief Alicia Welch, who just retired, a dear friend and mentor, coach, guide, and Chief Karen Richter are two individuals that have really impacted me that I wanted to speak about, but so many have really assisted. And to my new position I'm stepping into, I feel like I'm kind of cheating. I had the opportunity to step in the acting role for 9 months into the Fire Prevention Bureau and be the acting fire marshal. And what I've been able to realize, thanks to the help of, I would call him my mentor, even right here in front of us is Chief Roy Harvey, the assistant fire marshal, step in hand, he's building an incredible team. And in 9 months, I'm looking at the inspectors who are here, the captains that are here. I am so very proud to be your fire marshal. What you've been able to accomplish in 9 months is incredible, and I can't wait to see where we take the Bureau. From our inspectors to our clerical to our civilians, incredible, and I'm so excited to be stepping into this position. Lastly, thanks to the Chief, the Commissioners, City Council, CUFLAC, the COA, LA Women Fire Service, and the Stentorians. Thank you for having the confidence in my skill set, and like I said, I'm looking forward to the future, so thank you.
Congratulations, Chief. Eric Scott, Fire Captain, Paramedic, Public Information Officer. As previously mentioned, we do have two additional presentations to have here. The first is a unique recognition for the innovative and diligent efforts that our friends at the Los Angeles Aqueduct Filtration Plant have conserved over 5 million gallons of water for us. And this was during the LAFD's Engineer Practical Examination. And we have a couple photos here as we scroll through. You can see what that plant looks like, which is in Sylmore on Fire Station 91's first in. But our departments have forged together a long history of having a relationship where they've provided us the opportunity to have swift water rescue training at that facility, also live fire training, hazmat training, and this has gone on for over 20 years. So now, in an effort to conserve the water, we've partnered together for the second engineer practical examination that was at the filtration plant. And they conserved water by recirculating all the water that was used by the fire engines during this important examination back into the ponds for further use. And Chief Valle here has repeatedly worked with these members and really emphasizes how hospitable, cooperative, and professional they are. So we'd like to ask them to come up and join us here. We have Filtration Plant Manager V. Miller, Filtration Plant Manager of Treatment Operations, Razmik Manukian, and we'd like to briefly have them stand here and we'll read the certificate. In recognition and sincere gratitude of your innovation and diligent efforts by conserving over 5 million gallons of water while facilitating the Los Angeles Fire Department's engineer practical examination to over 70 engineer candidates at the LA Aqueduct Filtration Plant between April 10 and May 5, 2017, the Los Angeles Fire Department commends you and extends our appreciation for your cooperation and outstanding support. Presented this 6th day of June 2017, Ralph M. Terrazas.
I want to highlight our partnership with Water and Power. We are always trying to be more sustainable, more green. And we did things like shutting off the sprinklers to our front lawns to conserve water. And then we thought about the promotional exam, the engineer promotional exam, and what a great opportunity it would be if we could figure out a way. And these gentlemen helped us do that. And we do this test every 2 years, so the savings are going to accumulate more and more every time we do the test. So I couldn't be more proud of our partnership with Water and Power and thankful for their assistance in achieving that sustainability goal for us. Now I'd like to turn the mic over to the honorees.
Thank you. We've had a long working history with the fire department from the 94 earthquake to present to hazmat response. And I want to thank V. He's the initiator working with the fire department. And I'm always asking, how long are these guys here for? He says a month. It's in the email. Oh, okay, it's in the fine print. But I'm going to turn this over to V because he really deserves the recognition.
Very honored. My 30 years with the department, I think this is one of the nicest things I've ever gotten. We have worked with you fire department folks for more than 20 years. If anything, I'm just building on the things that were started by a great gentleman named Douglas K. Sunshine. I look forward to continuing it. We've done Swift Water with the fire department. I believe it's live fire training where people go in and go into fires. Things like the engineer training, things with Chief Valle, things with your hazmat folks. You'll probably get a report, but yesterday we actually had a chlorine incident at one of our facilities, and one of our employees was exposed to chlorine. And your hazmat team responded, and because of the things that we've built with the fire department, it was a seamless response. Our folks working with your folks, and just want to continue that, and to be honest, thank you very much.
We dedicate these certificates to Grandma McKnight for the dozen offspring she's born, and to all those parents that complain about a single child, get a life. Thank you.
Sure. Real quick. On behalf of the Los Angeles Fire Department, we made a plaque for them as well for their partnership. So I'd like to present that as well.
Well, gentlemen, we'll let you go ahead and take a quick photo op there with Firefighter Ortiz with the commissioners, and then we'll move on to the second presentation. Thank you. And now this second incident that we're going to speak about took place on February 2nd, 2017, where Fire Station 57 responded to a structure fire at the 8900 block of Van Ness Avenue in South Los Angeles. And when these firefighters arrived on scene, there was a heavy black smoke that was billowing out of a single-family dwelling. And it was a kind of a chaotic scene. When they arrived there was crowds of people. They were yelling that there was a man trapped inside. Some of those individuals, bystanders, had attempted to go inside of that burning structure to help that individual. However, they were pushed back by the intense smoke, by the intense flame. Now, also approximately 1 week prior to this incident, also in Fire Station 57's first in, was a significant incident where 4 children were dramatically rescued. You may remember that. But these firefighters here took that incident and honed in their training and their operations to where now 1 week later they were able to quickly execute their plan of attack. And without hesitation, 57s here ran in the front door, brought an 1.5 inch line. The smoke was so heavy and thick it was down to within 3 feet. As they crawled in, with approximately 20 feet inside, they were able to locate an elderly male laying on the ground on his stomach, unconscious, not breathing. They had close coordinated communications with the members inside that structure as well as outside. Were able to rescue that individual, pull them safely to the exterior, where they also had firefighter paramedics that were standing by that rendered immediate medical aid and transported that 94-year-old male, who happened to be a retired LAPD member, to a local hospital in critical condition. So if today here we're recognizing these brave firefighters for their valiant efforts. In recognition and sincere gratitude of your heroic courage, diligent efforts, personal initiative, and expedient rescue efforts of an unconscious elderly man performing during dangerous conditions at a structure fire on February 2nd, 2017 at 8950 South Van Ness Avenue in South Los Angeles. The Los Angeles Fire Department commends you for your extraordinary life-saving efforts to a citizen of the city of Los Angeles. Presented this 6th day of June 2017, Ralph M. Terrazas.
I can't believe how lucky I am. I get to stand up here and say nice things about all the great people and the great work that they do. I have a special attachment to Fire Station 57. I worked there for 2 years as a firefighter. And 57s is one of our busiest engines in the city. And I know Captain Skier has been there for several years. And I don't know how he does it because the pace is unrelenting. The activity, it doesn't get quiet. The morale is a high morale fire station. They do outstanding work. This is another example of our firefighters risking their life to save the life of another. Somebody they don't know, somebody that they may never see again or have seen before. It doesn't matter. They're a person that lives in the city of Los Angeles. It's our responsibility to protect lives and property, and they lay their lives on the line every day. Congratulations. Now I'd like to have Captain Skier come up to the mic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Very proud to be at 57s, and these guys are exemplary to me. I'm very proud of them and very proud to be on the job. Thank you.
As usual, our people are very modest, and we're going to take a few pictures, and we'll move on to the next part of our commission meeting. Let's go to the front. There you go, Cap.
That concludes our presentations. So for the consent agenda items.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move items 4A through D and also item 5E to our consent agenda. So I move the recommendations for items 4A through D and item 5E.
Any objection or a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So then, let's see. So we were going to take one item out of order, and I think it's the 5G, which is the verbal report by the Personnel Department. Who is that right? Okay. So if the Personnel Department's here, great. Thanks.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chief Terrazas, Ms. Raffich, Deputy Chief Richard Rideout, Training and Support Bureau. This is a report back as requested by the Commission relative to the board report entitled Firefighter Candidate Assessment Passing Rate, which was originally submitted on March the 6th. We have with us today our partners from the Personnel Department, Aram Kuyumjian, Assistant General Manager of Public Safety, and Raylin Napper, Chief of Public Safety Division. They have been with us since we started this process, and they're here to provide additional information and some clarity to our metrics. Thanks.
Thank you, Chief Rideout. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chief. First, I want to communicate to you the condolences of the Personnel Department on the loss of firefighter Wong. And given that we're your partners in hiring, we share your grief at this time. Thank you for having me back. I know I've spoken to you on a couple of occasions on the firefighter hiring process and specifically the candidate assessment. Raylin Napper is going to give you more details about how the test was administered and how the pass rate was determined, but I wanted to make a couple of points in order to contextualize this for you. First of all, I understand that at the last meeting there was some impression that somehow the overall scores had dropped and that this was some kind of an accidental or a surprise occurrence, or that it was the unintended consequences of the test. And I want to assure you that it was not unintended and it was not accidental. We set the pass point, and we wanted a test that was more robust in order to deliver to you and to the chief the highest caliber candidates that we could find. Secondly, even though the percentages of passers is very important and it's something that we pay attention to and we analyze, what really speaks to us this year is the raw numbers of the candidates and the fact that they have improved among every single underrepresented group. They have improved significantly, and in the case of female candidates, they have doubled, and that is the result of the tremendous work of Chief Welch and her team. I also want to let you know that given those numbers and how impressive they are, in this very difficult budget year, the City Council actually increased the funding for diversity outreach for the fire department because they were so impressed with the work that the departments had done jointly. And I want to thank Commissioner Nimberg in particular for the outreach she did with the council offices during that very important time. So thank you for the opportunity. I want to now turn it over to Ms. Napper to give you a more detailed description of how the test was administered.
All right. Good morning, Commissioners. Again, I'm Raylin Napper from the Personnel Department. And I want to convey to you what went into the FCA that produced the results that you see in the report, and that the results you see represented success in terms of both recruiting and testing. So, first of all, just want to emphasize that it was a different test in 2016. The FCA, this was the first time we used it. The 2014 test was developed by the Personnel Department. The FCA in 2016 was developed by PSI after a lot of study. And we suggested including the 2014 numbers not as a direct comparison to the 2016 test, rather to show that we far exceeded those numbers in quantity and diversity. Tests have two purposes. The first purpose of a test is to predict performance on the job. The second purpose is to narrow an applicant pool. I and everyone who's been working with the FCA believe that we had a better test in 2016 with the FCA. I'll explain that in a second. We screened out more people, which produce a higher caliber candidate pool, and we still have more diversity than probably ever before. So why is it a better test? Well, I consider it a better test because we have more evidence of validity. So the test is valid and predictive. In 2014, we only had content validity, which means job relatedness. In 2016, for the FCA, we had content validity, criterion validity, transport validity, and construct validity, thanks to the work of PSI. So content validity means you talk to job experts, you identify the knowledge, skills, and abilities important to the job, and make sure the test tests for those things. Had that in 2014, 2016. But then criterion validity, I want to go into a little detail on that for you. So PSI had current incumbents, LAFD firefighters, take the FCA. So we knew how current incumbents performed on the test. We also knew how those people perform on the job, had their performance appraisals, talked to their supervisors. And that data showed that the higher your score was on the FCA, the higher your average performance on the job was. So there was a correlation, an additional level of validity. I won't go into the other types. Moving on to the cut score or pass point, which produces the pass rate. We chose what score on the FCA would be considered passing. When we set the cut score, we can predict what the pass rate will be for the entire pool. And also when we set the cut score, we knew that we would expect an overall pass rate lower than we had in 2017. Again, as Aram said, it was intentional. So how did we set the cut score? Well, we waited until about 1,000 people took the FCA, so we had a really good sample size of how current applicants were doing on the test. We also looked at how those incumbents performed on the test. And then we explored different methodologies for setting a cut score, and we settled on a traditional method called an expectancy chart. And we felt that was the most reliable and predictive. And an expectancy chart identifies the score at which the difference in expected performance on the job of those who pass and those who fail is the greatest. So let me say that a different way. Because of where we set the cut score, we can say that everyone who passes the FCA will have a significantly higher average job performance than those who had failed if they had been hired. So again, we had a test with more validity than just content validity or job relatedness, therefore more predictive of job performance. We reduced the applicant pool by a larger percentage by having a lower pass rate, therefore producing a higher caliber candidate pool. And we still had more diversity with over half the pool from underrepresented groups and more than doubling the female candidates. And now I'll take any questions you may have.
So I think the original, because I think it was my question, I was kind of confused by the numbers because we were comparing numbers from one test versus a new test. And is the FCA the test that was, it's a relatively new test, right? And it's being used nationally. Can we just have a recap of that because it was a couple months ago?
Sure. Yes, the FCA is different, is somewhat new. PSI developed it. It is used in several jurisdictions, including New York City and a number of other ones.
So New York is a major
New York and
jurisdiction
us, yes.
that uses it, and before us, they were the only big city that was using it, right?
Correct.
So, so the scores that we had from our prior test compared to our new one. So I get now that the pass rate is one that we set, and we set it higher, and I don't have a problem with that. I guess I just want to have a better understanding of what the mix of the passers is in our last, like under our last test that we use versus now. And I understand that when we're talking about diversity, that we do have more diversity because we have more women passing, and that's great. But I'm also concerned about like the passage rate of African Americans and Asian Americans and Latinos and what that looks like. So if we have like, so my concern is that, you know, like we have all of these different parts that we need to worry about. So if we have, you know, and if in our last test, we didn't, you know, it just feels like we're not comparing the same things, or we don't have the same sort of mixture, and we might have like more, you know, we gain in one place, but then we lose in other places. I don't know how else to explain that, but that's kind of my concern.
I'll try. So again, the numbers are not an apples to apples comparison.
I know.
Was for context. And I would say, well, because we raised the bar, so to speak, for what it takes to pass this test, we knew that the overall pass rate would be lower, and that's for the group. And then we drilled down on each individual group by gender and ethnicity, and you can see across the board, everybody went down. Different rates, but everyone went down as predicted, except African American. Their pass rate was higher in the FCA than it was in the 2014.
Okay, so because I understand, because when you're talking about the raw numbers, I mean, we had a lot more applicants. So obviously we're going to have a lot more people taking the exam. But so I'm sort of concerned about the pie for just the passers. Let's look at just the people who passed the last test and just the people who passed the new test.
Okay.
And what does the pie look like? Is the pie as diverse? And I think you kind of need to have two separate pies. You need to have a pie for gender, and then you need to have a pie for like ethnicity.
Right, and that's what this chart is.
Okay.
It is more diverse now than it was then. Just taking passers into effect.
Okay, it's just hard for me to see it because it was like 2 months ago, and then now we don't have the little pie. It would help to have the pie, but
Okay, pie. All right.
It would have been better if we'd had the material given to us again to look at, even though it was a
Just to
verbal
sort of
report.
refresh,
Because
kind
it
of.
was-
I didn't know you didn't have it, so okay.
That's okay.
But
But this was helpful, though.
Every time you do this test, will you be changing the pass point?
Every administration, we can look at that group and see and decide what point makes a difference. What point is the predictive point?
So the pass point was based upon the group taking the test?
A large sample taking the test, about 1,000 people, as well as people currently on the job who took the test.
It seems like it would be difficult to compare the old test to the new test.
Well, we're not
Because you use so
comparing.
many different things
Yeah.
to, to even look at, it just, I don't know how you would look at the two and the same, and think of the same numbers because they're so different.
And it's not a comparison. It was just for context.
Thank you.
Oh, good. We have the numbers. So to show you where we were and where we are now, that was the only point of the numbers. And
Oh yeah, so this still doesn't have a pie, but
there's no pie. Sorry.
Okay. Well, this is helpful. If I have more questions, I can just ask you afterwards.
Absolutely.
I mean, not after today, but
Right.
like
I'll come
at
back
some
anytime.
at some later point. I'll just ask you. Does anybody have any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to, oh yeah, do we just, I think we just, yeah, so we don't need to do anything. So moving on to 5A, which is report by the department on the status of the Standards of Cover project.
Good morning, Madam President,
Morning.
Commissioners, Fire Chief Terrazas, Ms. Rafish, who stepped out. I'm Tyler Dixon, Captain 2, assigned to the planning section here in the Fire Chief's office. I'm here to give you a report or discuss the written report provided to you on the status of the Standards of Cover project. Just a quick overview of the components of the Standards of Cover, which is a written procedures that determine the distribution and concentration of fixed and mobile resources. This document is a community-based, collaborative, matrix-driven self-assessment of our department's current model. The Standards of Cover's instructions or program was developed by the Center for Public Safety Excellence, which is a national organization that was established in the mid-'80s between a MOU between the International Association of Fire Chiefs and the International City and County Management Association. The major point to take away from the standards of cover is that it is a self-assessment, regardless of who performs it, whether it's a third party or internally. It is a self-assessment that is tailor-made to the City of Los Angeles. The purpose of this assessment is that it can assist in assessing community fire and non-fire risk, defining baseline performance benchmarks, planning future fire station locations, determining the ideal apparatus placement and utilization, measuring service delivery performance, and it can also support strategic planning and policy development. Key elements that I'm going to discuss here is that, one, it is a community risk assessment is the major portion or chunk of work of a standards of cover document. That community risk assessment aids in the determination of levels of service to be provided in specific areas based on community and stakeholder input. It analyzes our current performance, and it will assist us in developing a document that will lead us into the future. As you can see in the report provided to you, Commissioners, there are 6 major steps to a standards of cover document. The first step is the review of current deployment. The second is the community risk assessment, which again is the major chunk of work to go into this. It involves a multi-systemed approach of looking at risk and dividing the city into service areas and categorizing the risk in those service areas and developing our response matrix based on that community risk assessment. The third step is measuring system performance based on historical data, which we have been gathering for several years through the Fire Stat section. An adoption of draft performance measures, again, which is a collaborative effort through multiple stakeholders, including the community, labor organizations, and government officials. Finally, we develop or validate a methodology to comply with these performance measures that we adopt, and then complete an overall evaluation of the delivery system, including recommendations for change in development and deployment or in the development of policy. The major point, again, to stress on this is that the standards of cover document or the standards of cover process that the Centers for Public Safety Excellence provides does not provide the actual matrix or methodology of measuring our performance. That is something that we establish internally through a collaborative effort with those stakeholders we discussed. The history of this project is that we started work as a department in April 2014. In July of 2014, based on our motion by the City Council Public Safety Committee, an RFP or RFQ was created. However, in August of 2014, based on feedback from the Public Safety Committee, we withdrew the RFQ process to allow for a more thorough collaboration through all of those stakeholders in the actual RFQ process prior to moving into the Standards of Cover project. Since 2014, we have gone through 10 revisions of the RFQ or RFP with input from the Chief Officers Association, UFLAC, and multiple council districts, including the Public Safety Committee. Currently, the most recent step was last year in 2016. Members of the planning section met with UFLAC in UFLAC headquarters, and at that point, UFLAC stated that they were going to defer their opinion on the current RFQ to the International Association of Firefighters headquarters, and we are currently waiting to hear back on the determination of the IAFF. Should we move forward with that, the RFQ would be revisited and revised, presented to the Public Safety Council, and then it has been communicated to us that it would go to a full council vote from there on. I'm now prepared to answer questions you might have.
Go for it.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the concise explanation of the standards of cover process. there's a lot within the standards of cover that I think is really important for the future of our department to kind of know who we want to be for the next 50 years. And so the exercises that this proposes for us to go through, they strike me as very valuable. I know a lot of other departments have gone through it. To your knowledge, have any departments of our size, or let's say in sort of the top 10, gone through this exercise?
Based on my conversations with the Center for Public Safety Excellence, there are 235 organizations that have actually gone through the complete accreditation process that our organization has, the standards of cover being the first step in that. The largest department that has completed that full accreditation process is the Houston Fire Department, which is roughly serving half the population of the city of Los Angeles, a smaller organization. As far as the closest department you could maybe come to the West Coast and compare us to would be San Diego, has completed a standards of cover project.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a smaller population, a smaller geographic area, but
A
to my
good-sized
knowledge,
city.
we would be the largest organization to complete this document.
Any sense of what their feedback was on going through the process?
Yes, both those larger organizations employed a third-party consultant group to actually produce the document. However, again, even if you have a third-party organization that has expertise in this process, they are guiding us as a department with those stakeholders through that process. It is still a self-assessment process based on the standards that we as the LAFD, in partnership with all of those stakeholders that we've discussed, base our metrics to be assessed.
I had a conversation with their fire chief from San Diego. His name is Brian Fennessy. I've read the standards of cover report that was generated. I think that was completed about 2 months ago or so. I think it's an excellent document. I want to make sure there's a clear distinction between accreditation and standards of cover. Accreditation identifies 10 main categories, of which standards of cover is one. But separating that, standards of cover document, I like the process and I'm fully supportive of the process. Chief Fennessy shared with me that it did not tell them anything they didn't already know, but it's a good document to have from a third-party source validating their internal opinion. So I concur with that value, and that's something we're discussing with UFLAC on an ongoing basis, most recently as last Friday, about how we can partner in moving the RFP forward.
Okay, great, thanks. So we were all appointed here in 2013. I think at that point the standards of cover exercise was starting, or we were getting ready to issue an RFQ. You mentioned it's been through 10 revisions, and now 2016. I know that this was part of our strategic plan for the department by 2017, which is this year, to actually have a standards of cover completed. So obviously we're a little behind the eight ball on that. For me, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, in lieu of a standards of cover, my question continues to be, how are we making resource decisions? Because there are some important benchmarks. I've reviewed Anaheim standard of cover, for example, and they set a lot of important benchmarks. I also looked at Washington, D.C., did a standards of cover exercise, where there are actual standard benchmarks set, and then they get pretty nuanced, right? And then you can use those to inform some resource allocation decisions. In lieu of a standards of cover, what are the standard benchmarks that we use?
I'll take that one. It's the we look at our reports from call load and response time. Mm-hmm. Then, based on the most active assignments, we request resources to deploy there to reduce and more equalize the call load and reduce the response time.
So that's good, but it is I think a far more broad brush approach to thinking about how we make resource decisions. So I think that's an ongoing conversation. put a pin in that for a second. I can come back. I've got other questions, but I want to yield to my colleagues if they have other questions as well.
I don't actually have a question, but I think I share your concern is that we seem to start this so long ago. And I don't know if it's because we went through several chiefs and it brought us to this point of what. But when I got this report, it seemed like it was just a review and we're starting over again. And I'm going, oh, wow, I thought we'd be getting closer to finishing this process. Is it the problem with the RFQ or that's holding us up at this point, and they can't move forward until we get that?
It's not the RFP. It's that we need to get consensus from labor. The department can't move by itself and implement this. I am in fully support of having a standards of cover. We have to reach a middle ground where we can work together with labor to collaboratively support an RFP. The money was allocated, $400,000, but it was removed because of the citywide budget shortfall about 2 months ago. So the first step is we would have to get the money reallocated, and we would have the ongoing process of working with labor to find the middle ground where everybody would agree that we move forward with a standards of cover RFP.
Because it seems like it would really be important, and I especially think it after talking with some paramedics at the emergency room, how they felt that maybe the equipment we're purchasing is not quite the equipment we may need to purchase. But if we had some guidelines as to what is actually based upon our policy of what our history is, we probably could then move in that direction more easily than just from the top of our heads. I don't know what we do. I mean, if there's something we can do to help with this more, I'd like to know, because I really would like to see it move forward. I'm particularly interested in also having all the stakeholder groups participate, especially the public. I remember talking about this before, and they talked about they would have neighborhood councils or some groups like that work on it a few years back. But I would like to do whatever we can do to try to help to move this forward, because I think it is an important part of this department. And it would just be a guideline for us to have to know where we're going and what we need to do.
So there's a couple of things I want to say about this. Like, first, we've actually been operating for 100 years or whatever without a standards of cover. So it's not an essential thing, but it is something that we want to do. And part of the reason why it hasn't happened is, one of the reasons that Chief Terrazas talked about, which is it's going to tell us stuff that we already know. And so there's, it's an inherently political process, and sometimes people want to hear it and sometimes they don't want to hear it. So, but at the same time, if we ever get to the point where we get a standards of cover done, actually implementing any of the recommendations is going to be another political process. I mean, nothing's going to happen if we don't come to consensus. So that's the only thing that I would say to sort of get people moving on it. Because it's not like lack of will on the part of the department. And so that's the only thing I want to say about that.
Oh, I don't want to indicate that I felt that the department was not trying to move ahead, but I just think that whoever the people are that need to move ahead, we need to move ahead. And I also want to point out that 100 years ago, we were not a data-driven department, and things have really changed, and we need this plan.
If I could respond to that, you're correct. We're a different department, but no other department has fire stat, and we look at that data all the time to decide where should we deploy our V-staff ambulances. Is there better hours that we could deploy them? What if we change the location? My path forward, and I've discussed this with leadership from UFLAC, that I want to share governance of this process. I want them to be an equal partner in deciding what the RFP looks like. And when the findings come back, I want them to be an equal partner and decide what is doable and what is not. We haven't further explored that. I want to have that ongoing discussion. I think part of that is trust. I'm willing to make up a letter of agreement and sign my name to it, that these are the parameters in which we will move forward. So the department is actively pursuing this document. It will take some time once it's awarded, approximately a year. And that's okay. I know it's going to take time. We gotta move the ball forward, and that's what we're trying to do.
I think Commissioner Woods Grace asked a great question, which is what can we do to try to help this move forward? I think sometimes it is helpful to have some action-forcing deadlines to try to just raise something to the top of the agenda. I think I'm interested in the opinion of this commission in terms of what makes sense for us to have this continue to come back to us for progress reports with some regularity, so we can get a sense of what's going on, or to say, look, we would like to set a goal of seeing an RFQ in this commission for us to forward to the council for their approval, and so perhaps that's something that we could do. I'm curious as to what my colleagues think about that idea of saying, we would like this to come back in X amount of months, so that we'd like to set a goal for the RFQ to be back.
I don't know that it's going to be that helpful to, and I mean, I thought it was a great report, but I also think that it's not that helpful to just get a report saying, we're not moving on it because we don't have any funds for it, and then to have another report in 2 months that says we can't move on it because we don't have any funds for it.
This is not about the funds, though, right now. We don't even have an RFQ to get funded. The reason why we don't have funds is because we don't have anything to move forward. So, which makes sense. Why have money set aside in the budget if we've got nothing to move forward? But if between now and the next budget cycle we're trying to reach a point where we have something to move forward, then, that's really my question: is why not allow us to keep tabs on how this is moving forward? Otherwise, could well be another 3 years, and then we'll all ask the same questions over again. But again, I
Well, I
my
just
colleagues.
think a lot of the work of that is not necessarily doesn't happen in the commission.
Oh no, of course not. But certainly, it is within our purview to keep tabs on, keep track of it. But Dr. Haar, Commissioner Woods, great. I don't know if you have an opinion.
I would actually like to be informed on the status of the RFP. I mean, where are we on it? Is it still here, there, or where? Because that would help us to know which direction we're moving in.
I mean, I know
It never was agreed upon. The final, we've had multiple drafts, but the final draft was never approved, and it never went forward. What I propose or suggest is that we give quarterly updates on our progress with our ongoing discussions with UFLAC.
That's fine.
Okay, that sounds good. In the interim, though, given that it's, we're a year. Let's say there was agreement on an RFQ even in the next 6 months, we would have to wait for the following budget cycle to fund that RFQ, and so we're a good 18 months minimum away from seeing any kind of a standard of cover coming back to us. I do think that if we're going to consider additional resource allocations, we need to have some more transparent benchmarks in terms of how we are making those decisions beyond the broadest brush of let's look at individual stations and look at their individual call load. That's not a systemic way to look at our allocation of staffing and our allocation of resources. So I do think that in lieu of a standards of cover, there's a saying around here, which I've heard a lot, which is 100 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. Now, I don't think that's entirely fair to the work that the leadership of this department has done and the leadership of this commission has done. But I understand the sentiment. And I do think that as we become more data informed, and I want to say data informed rather than data driven, because I think that data informed means that we pair hard data with experience, valuable experience. In lieu of a standards of cover, we need to have some more data-informed ways of making our decisions. And when our budget comes back to us this year, I, for one, and mentioned what my fellow commissioners think about this, I, for one, want to see what is the metric against which we are making decisions about how to allocate resources and staffing, and how will those resource decisions, those allocations of scarce funds, support us in meeting our goals of, reducing specific or improving emergency services, emergency responses, improving coverage. Standards of cover is going to do what it's going to do, and I recognize that there is a lot of politics in there. It may tell us what we already know. I'm not convinced that it will, but having those specific benchmarks and those targets, I think, is really important to making wise decisions about the scarce funds that we do have, and for us to be good stewards of our budget. So, I think I would ask that we start to think about, as a parallel track to standards of cover, what do 2 or 3 additional metrics look like that we can use as a commission to determine whether or not, or how to make additional resource decisions. So that's what I'm proposing in the interim, is that we revisit that, because I am concerned about how long the standards of cover project will take.
So, do you have any specific recommendations about what?
I do.
Well, this
but,
is the time.
I think we have a top line number right now in terms of average response times. I think that's a good top line number. We want to have a 5-minute response to get a first unit on scene. That's good. That should be our top line response. Secondarily, though, I think we should be looking at what our standard is for having a ALS transport on scene for ALS resources. I also think that we should have standards for our coverage of transports related to coverage by bureau and percentiles of times that we have those resources available. Those are the things that I think we should be looking at, in addition to a 5-minute response, because those nuanced additional numbers are what will tell us what we need to know. So those are things I'd be interested for us to establish standards around.
So I think that we should, I know you want to say something, but I think maybe what we should do is we should separately agendize those issues, so that, because that seems like it's beyond the scope of standards of cover. But we should, we should have because we are I think we're data-driven more than just data-informed. I'll say that. I think we're data-driven. We have a lot of data. We're going to get a report about that later today. So I think we should use the data that we have to sort of, in the absence of standards to cover, have a transparent metrics that we use to sort of measure our performance. And we've done that to some extent, but I think we should do more of that. And I think that's fine. I don't know that it should be as extensive as what Commissioner Glazier has said, because that really gets into the weeds of how the fire chief and the deputy chiefs manage their particular divisions. But I do think we should have some, maybe 2 or 3 more issues than what the mayor has enunciated, which is the 5-minute response time.
I think it would be helpful if, leading into the budget, we had those metrics presented to us, because oftentimes all we get is a budget in 2 minutes and we have to pass it. But to have some idea as to what is helping to establish the budget, I think would be quite helpful. And then we could kind of compare our notes to what we hear in the field and what we hear here and what the chief is hearing. I think it would actually be quite helpful and would help to make the budget process more meaningful.
Yeah, because they're all related. You know, how we allocate resources, how we spend the people's money, and how we measure our performance.
I wholeheartedly agree. We do have a meeting with Dr. Yoshida and JSS coming up, I believe, next week with FireStat. Commissioner Glazier has been invited. Any other commissioner? I guess one more commissioner
One more.
could be invited, so we don't violate the Brown Act. But the question on the table will be, what other metrics could we explore that are in our possession to have some guidance in budget requests? That decision was made 2 weeks ago. And we've always been open to enhancing our data. If you look at our website, we do have specific data to structure fires and critical EMS that we didn't have 6 months ago. Nobody told us to do that. We did that on our own. And these additional metrics that we're talking about, we're not opposed. That's a different topic than standards to cover. They're related. I think we continue the standards to cover effort. Simultaneously, we have this discussion internally with JSS and FireStat and determine the path forward from that perspective.
I think that the department does a great job when they put the budget together. But I just think for commissioners, if we saw the metrics, if we had a meeting where we talked about it, it would be very helpful for me to support your great decisions more.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. It's the team that comes up with those great decisions. I'm just the spokesperson. But the results of that meeting and the follow-up meetings will lead to some metrics that we can present in conjunction with the new budget that we develop next fiscal year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have public comment from Freddie Escobar from UFLAC.
Freddie, we have comment first. I don't think Boise's very eager.
Good morning, President Ibarra, Fire Chief Terrazas, and Honorable Commissioners. Freddie Escobar, and I probably serve as Second Vice President of the United Firefighters of Los Angeles City, representing 3,200 firefighter inspectors and dispatchers with the Los Angeles Fire Department. First, I want to thank the department for their inclusion of UFLAC as an important step in the development of a proper standard of cover process. I also want to go on record by stating that UFLAC fully supports the development of a standard of cover document and the need for significant input from stakeholder groups, including UFLAC, elected officials, other governmental agencies, and the public. We also believe that it is in our mutual interest that this process is done the right way. The report also concludes an outside consultant could produce the standard of cover document as a more cost-effective measure. However, a standard of cover can also be produced using the Technical Assistance Program of the Commission of Fire Accreditation International, where LAFD management and staff are internally trained on the process of producing a standard of cover. It is our opinion that it is the best for a fire department as large and dynamic as the LAFD to learn to do this work internally so that we can continually monitor and update our progress and results rather than merely having an outside consultant complete this important work, only to move on to their next project when they are done. UFLAC is committed to being a partner in this effort for the benefit of our department and the millions of people in Los Angeles that we are honored to serve each and every day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a vote?
I move to adopt the recommendation for item 5A.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So item 5B is report by the Department on Council motion on uniformed fire safety guidelines for film locations.
Good morning, Madam President, Fire Commissioner, members,
Morning.
District Attorney, fellow firefighter members of the department, and guests. I'm Jeff Palmer. I'm the captain of the film unit, Fire Prevention Bureau, and I work for Chief Crawley and Chief Harvey. I am here to present a verbal report on the motion from Councilman Farrell's office in regards to the Uniform Safety Officer Program guidelines and the decision-making process that requires a uniform officer at filming activities. Just to give a little overview, the Motion Picture Association of America was proposing that the LAFD restructure its guidelines and procedures to allow spot checks at such times when a uniformed safety officer should be assigned. Multiple meetings were held with representatives from the Los Angeles City Fire Department, the Motion Picture Association of America, Film LA, and the Mayor's Office, along with UFLAC, to discuss the uniform hiring and possible cost-saving measures for the film industry. The fire chief has the authority to require a uniformed safety officer to be present whenever a chief determines it is essential for safeguarding and maintaining a high level of public safety that is expected by the public, elected officials, and the fire department. Guidelines and procedures have been put in place because of the unique safety challenges in enforcing codes and regulations at filming locations. A permit is a permit issued to film in the city of Los Angeles at locations other than a certified studio, Paramount, Fox Studio, CBS, is considered to be a change of use. There are unique challenges to enforce codes and regulations at these types of filming locations. Therefore, guidelines and procedures were put in place. Filming in California by the California State Fire Marshal's Motion and Pictures Entertainment Unit published a handbook that's been adopted by the use of all fire departments in California and throughout the country when regulating most filming locations that are considered to be a change of use. The following guidelines have been used to determine when we hire a uniformed safety officer or a spot check is required. California Health and Safety Code, which regulates special effects. California Fire Code, Chapter 48. California Health and Safety Code, which regulates fireworks, special effects, authorization, and enforcement. Title 19, which also regulates definition, licensing, permits, and regulations. Fire Code Section 104, which gives us the authority. Again, I mentioned filming in California. Our Fire Safety Officer Manual. Filming, California Film Commission production alerts, and Fire Prevention Public Safety Bureau general hiring guidelines for uniformed safety officers. The motion was put forth to also in response to cost-saving measures. In response to the concerns for all parties to streamline the filming hiring process, the fire department has modified two criteria that previously required a full-time uniformed safety officer and now requires only a spot check from the Los Angeles Fire Department, helping with the cost-saving measures. And our third motion was to consider to put our guidelines on the website. The ability to post our uniformed safety officer guidelines on the fire department's website is actively being discussed with our labor union at this time. Excuse me. Due to the high volume of filming that is done in the city of Los Angeles, it is important that our members have a high comfort level with the filming process, the laws, the regulations. The aim is to prevent and minimize the loss of life, property by the use of standard fire prevention procedures, proper use of codes, construction practices, and enforcement. We will continue to work closely with the film industry and Film LA to meet the goals and objectives of the mayor to bring and keep filming in the city of Los Angeles without compromising public safety. I have no further information at this time. Do you have any questions?
So spot checks, is this what you're recommending, that you have spot checks instead of a safety officer all the time?
The Motion Pictures Association of America is requesting that we have spot checks in locations where normally a uniformed safety officer is required. We are still requiring a uniformed safety officer at this time.
And is cost saving the only reason they want that?
At this point, there's probably other reasons behind the reasons why they want spot checks. I believe it has to do with the previous fire marshal and administration, but I don't know anything further than that.
Oh, because my concern is that I think safety first is the number one issue. And I recall having a conversation with someone in the past where studios wanted to make appointments to be inspected, and not just have people coming by doing their regular inspections. It just puts a question in my mind as to what are these studios doing. I know that they're doing a lot of interesting things these days. We want filming in LA, but it needs to be safe.
Exactly.
Not cost saving, but safe.
Any other questions?
So the motion was just to have the, can you explain what the motion is? Just
The
that-
motion was to have cost-saving measures by reducing the locations of where uniformed safety officers were and to spot checks. That would help save in cost, and also streamline our guidelines to reflect that cost savings.
And then to post them on the website?
And then to post them on the website, which is currently being reviewed by the UFLAC.
So, and our response is that's fine, or what?
Well, at this point, we're going to leave that information and to be answered by UFLAC.
Okay, so
So you said the state rules say that we would have a person on site.
Yes. Well, yes. Again, because of the unique situation of the filming locations that are certified studios, we have guidelines that we follow through the State Fire Marshal's Office Filming in California Handbook, along with the other state regulations, health and safety codes.
And so when they're not in regular studios, and they're in, I know, a lot of different places. In my
Hospitals, buildings, schools, churches.
Right. Then you would not have a person there?
We would have a uniformed safety officer there depending on what type of filming activity was going on.
So I guess in the studios, then you would do spot checks.
In the studios, we do annual maintenance inspections, and in studios, we do random spot checks as well. But they have the permit to do their filming without us actually going and having an officer, unless they have pyrotechnics going on or an audience show or something of that nature.
Hey, Cap, can I jump in here? There's two criteria that were modified that previously required a full-time uniformed fire safety officer that we're transitioning to spot check. Can you just share with us the two criteria?
Yes, I can, Chief. The first criteria was before, when a uniformed safety officer was required, it was required that if a special effects operator was using 10 squibs, and that's body hits or on any type of object, a uniformed safety officer would be assigned. And speaking with the special effects operators throughout California, they were saying that we can go to 15 and they would be safe and okay with that. Other than that, it would become a hazard. So we went from a uniformed safety officer being assigned with 10 squibs to 15 now. So anything less than 15, they can be a spot check.
And the second?
And the second would be any types of body hits. 3 body hits on any individual below the head and chest was required a uniformed safety officer. Now we're allowing 3 instead of 1.
So what that's done is given the film industry reduce their costs, because we don't have to have an officer there if they meet that criteria. What he's describing are special effects. I've done safety watches, and the production company can decide: do we want to have more than the allowable limit and hire full time, or do we do less and have a spot check? So that was a collaboration of the Fire Prevention Bureau with Motion Picture Association and UFLAC. The second piece of this is to post it on the website, and we're still in discussions on that issue.
Okay, so just to summarize so we can all be on the same page. So there's a motion from council, and then in response you make these 2 modifications, and you're going to post it to the website, and then you're negotiating with UFLAC about posting to the website?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's the only, is that all the council wanted, or did council want more?
No, I think all parties involved with this were happy with this compromise.
Yes.
Okay. That's fine then.
Does that mean that there will be less staff? It cuts staff. But if UFLAC agreed to it, I guess it's okay if it does cut staff.
It actually saves sending inspectors full-time to those 2 specific situations.
So it frees them up to continue with their regular assignment?
Yes.
I see. Okay.
We'll still have the spot check requirement, but one inspector can hit 10 spot checks a day, approximately.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine.
So
Okay,
what is it that, this is the motion we're passing?
No, we're responding
We're
to a motion
responding.
by
So
council.
we're just responding.
The department responded to a motion by council, by
O'Farrell.
Councilmember O'Farrell, as to some cost issues that MPA had brought up to them. It sounds like the department responded and that they're happy with it. I know that we have a comment from MPAA, so I'm hoping they're going to say that they're happy with this.
Me too.
But, if they're not, it would be helpful if you have a written comment, because then we could assess it before we vote on it. But I'm hoping they're going to say they like it. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. So now we have Sarah Walsh from the Motion Picture Association of America.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Commissioners
Morning.
and Chief Terrazas.
Morning.
My name is Sarah Walsh. I'm here today on behalf of the MPAA and our member companies, Disney, Fox, NBC Universal, Paramount, Sony, and Warner Brothers. By way of background, in November 2015, at a meeting of the City Film Task Force, the Fire Department proposed a 50% increase in the hourly rates that are charged to film and television productions requiring a uniformed safety officer. These rates are charged at a 4-hour minimum. The department committed to implement the increase over 3 years, which we greatly appreciate, and as well committed to expand the types of productions that are eligible for a spot check, which allows the UFSO to stop by a production rather than being on full assignment. The film and television community was told that an expansion of the spot check program would be implemented to help keep costs down in light of the increase of the UFSO fees for productions filming in the city of Los Angeles, of course, without any compromising of safety of cast, crew, and the general public. The effort was also intended to help implement the Mayor's Executive Directive 6, which regards supporting the film industry. And I just want to be clear that we are not recommending that all categories of UFSO be assigned to a spot check. That is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a handful of items, and I also want to be clear that these don't apply to the certified sound stages. That's a completely different process altogether. However, 18 months later, we've not seen much of an expansion of the spot check program. We are very appreciative of the 2 items that Captain Palmer discussed today. But in the meantime, 1 fee increase has already gone into effect, and a second is now scheduled to go into effect at the beginning of the city's fiscal year. So we're ready to collaborate and continue to work with anybody on this issue. We've had nearly a dozen meetings with the fire department, with UFLAC, and we've provided a number of suggestions on the expansion of the spot check program. And so, like I said, we're happy to discuss and continue the process, and we appreciate the work that's already been done.
Thanks a lot. So, vote?
Okay, move to adopt the recommendation for item 5B.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So now 5C is report by the Department on Unmanned Aerial Systems reports.
Good morning, Madam President, fellow commissioners, Chief Terrazas. My name is Richard Fields. I'm a battalion chief currently assigned to Battalion 13 on the C Platoon serving South Los Angeles. We're here today to obviously discuss the proposal of using unmanned aerial systems in assisting the fire department in doing its job safer. The fire department is seeking to become the first major metropolitan department to obtain a full jurisdictional COA, or Certificate of Authorization, to operate UAS as part of our initial action, hazard mitigation, damage assessment, and response matrix. Just to give you a little background, the FAA currently estimates that by the year 2020, there will be 7 million drones in the in the United States airspace. They're actually urging public service and fire departments to drive this conversation, play an active role in the development of legislature and governance. And we're seeking to be a part of that conversation now. This also fulfills our mission statement by using innovation to promote public safety. It fulfills our service statement in that we strive to remain at the leading edge of our profession by seeking all technologies that could assist us in doing our job safer. And ultimately, and there has been a theme today, it will provide for enhanced safety of our members as we protect the citizens of Los Angeles. How we got here. We were challenged approximately 2 years ago to define what our current mission goals are, what our future mission goals are, now as a full service organization, and where the gaps in that service lie. We found that UAV technology could assist us in filling those gaps. Our actions in testing that process were extremely deliberate. We focused specifically on the technology and helping us to do our job, not as hobbyists looking to play with a new toy. This is an extensive 2-year research project that I've been fortunate to be a part of. We've collaborated with the FAA on a very regular basis, having them review all of our proposed and draft documentation for thoroughness and completeness. We've collaborated with the City Council. We are currently have a city attorney assigned to our project from the City Attorney's Office. In discussions with LAPD, LA County Fire Department and Police Department, Homeland Security, and we've also looked to industry leaders, the Menlo Park Fire Department, Ventura County Sheriff's Department, and fire departments, and use a number of technical advisors to assist us in researching our project. We are ongoing collaborating with LAFD Air Ops, Operations Valley Bureau, the in-service training staff, and last but not least, our CIO, Scott Porter. We rely heavily on people who have background in flight operations, one of which I partner with on a regular basis is firefighter paramedic Dave Danielson, who's currently assigned to our TIMS unit, but has had a distinguished career in our military, served over 20 years as a senior chief petty officer in the United States Army. United States Navy, I apologize. Make that distinction. I understand. Please forgive me.
Go Navy.
He's going to strangle me later. The next steps in our process, this was a big milestone. One of the reasons that we didn't come before the Fire Commission or didn't begin this conversation in a formal manner is because we wanted to be extremely thorough. And we've combed through our documentation and our proposed processes. And that's why we're here before you today. Our next step is to, after these discussions reach the satisfactory level, that we'll discuss or present this to the Public Safety Committee. And at the City Attorney's recommendation, we will seek full council approval for our proposed project. The City Attorney will then provide us with a declaration letter, which I can speak about a little bit later in a little more detail, and at which time we will submit to the FAA for permission to enter into or begin the COA process. After which, it's been the recommendations of our case studies and the people who've been involved in the UAS field that we will, with the fire chief's support, as well as our public information office, launch an aggressive public education and awareness campaign. It is critical that we talked about partnership before, but it's critical that we use the public as our partner, and we intend to do that every step of the way. The COA process, once we enter it, has to be renewed, so we will constantly be under the scrutiny of the FAA, and then we have to reapply for a COA every 4 years. The reason that we're even able to do this is we meet federal law, or the definition of a public entity, as described in federal law, Title 49, Section 40125. And we also meet city ordinance, or the LA Municipal Code, Chapter 5, Article 6, which exempts us from the prohibition of using the UAS technology in LA City airspace. Our long-term projections, after we go through this arduous process, will be to continue to focus on to build an effective program development. We will finalize all of our draft documentation, again with strict oversight, and then we will turn that draft documentation into policy. Some other steps include further development of our fleet management, our operational integration, and then data workflows. I must stress that the FAA's mission is constantly to protect the national airspace. They ask us the question, does your operation or your proposed operation maintain or enhance the safety of the public airspace? And we can unequivocally answer yes. There are some public and civil rules that apply to us. The reason that we are seeking a jurisdictional COA is that since we began this process a couple years ago, the only pathway to operate a UAS in national airspace inside the city was seeking a Part 333 license or a certificate of authority. Well, since then, the FAA has softened some rules, and they have created a Part 107 license that allows people to enter into a process to be licensed to fly the UAS. However, in staying in constant contact with the FAA and seeking legal counsel wherever it is available, we are going to continue to operate our program if the proposal is approved under a full authority COA, which requires us to meet a higher standard and to be reviewed constantly by the FAA. There are some other factors to the program, but in the interest of time, I'll end my report and I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thanks. I think it is exciting that we're finally able to employ this technology, and I know that there's a lot of major incidents that we respond to where this will be really super helpful for us in terms of coordinating response and ultimately a benefit to the safety of our members as well as the city. I appreciate the attention to detail on trying to ensure that there's a level of comfort with privacy advocates and the ACLU. A couple of quick questions. On page 3, we talk about safety. We're not going to utilize UAS when LAFD helicopters are engaged. Presumably the same rules if LAPD helicopters were engaged. That may be, and they're engaged sometimes when it's not necessarily a law enforcement issue, but sometimes they may be around in a large brush fire or something is circulating. That's presumably part of the...
That is correct.
Okay.
And again, our documentation is still in draft form, and we're constantly having it reviewed for its thoroughness. But yes, the purpose of operating under a COA and having the actual pilots be at a minimum Part 107 license is that they understand flight operations. They understand airspace and reading airspace maps. So they are, in essence, really no different than a manned pilot, and they will operate at that level. We've been in constant contact with LAPD to make sure that what we propose will not interfere with their operations, but it will always be guided by the incident commander, just as any other resource is.
And the only other safety concern I could see is with news operations. Sometimes those helicopters can get pretty aggressive. We have some sort of safety protocol in place? I mean, do we have restricted airspace around emergency events we have rules in place already that allow us to operate? Is that correct?
That is correct. Federal law and state and local law give priority of airspace to fire departments or public service agencies that are mitigating an emergency. So we have carte blanche without question over that airspace, and we take priority. However, safety being important, we will still operate as any other pilot does in national airspace.
Okay, great. On the archives, so I understand that if there's something related to a specific fire or emergency event, then we would maintain that footage with Arson as our custodian of record. Makes sense. We then have other things, planned training events or material not related to LIT response, which is supposed to be surrendered to ISTS and the CLO. Sorry, tell me again what ISTS is.
I'm sorry, the in-service training section.
Okay. Then what happens to that? Do we destroy that or?
Not necessarily destroy, but currently, if we have a training event, the best way to get that out to the masses, obviously, is to record it. And we'll use UAS technology to help us to capture that event. Mm-hmm. And we intend on using training events to get that information out to our department membership. If any information that we capture may be sensitive, then absolutely we'll handle it in a legal manner. Then that's why we're using the arson section as our custodian of records, as they currently are for everything else.
Yeah. So I would, while I certainly know that we all have best intentions here, I think that that a little bit of a loophole there that I think we should close, of saying, look, if we have rules on, if we have recorded material that is not related to a response and has no training purpose, we should destroy it. And I think that we should be explicit about that just to preempt anybody from challenging the use of what is a very valuable tool here. And so my interest here is, how do we preempt a challenge to what we're doing here or a protest by saying, look, we're real clear on what happens to footage. If somebody is taking footage of something that we should not have been taking footage of, whether it was accidental or not, that footage should be destroyed, so that it doesn't get out there. So I would encourage you to be explicit about what we keep and what we don't keep that would not be related to emergency response. The other thing is around logs. So I know you refer to recording when we use a document. Certainly, there's a lot of notification that we're using the UAS. Good. I think oversight of those logs is important. It's important to have a check on those. Right now, you're talking about submitting quarterly reports to the fire commissioners. I would actually like to explore a role for our independent assessor in reviewing the logs as potentially something that that may be something that she can look at, perhaps quarterly, and maybe she's the one who's responsible for providing us with a report on what goes on with those logs. But I think that's sort of in keeping with the idea of having an independent review of how we're using the UAS. It gives us an additional layer of check on the work, an additional level of credibility here. So I'd be interested to explore what that role might look like for her to say, I want to see, to actually look at the logs and say, when did we use it? What was it for? Where did the footage go?
So in our, the document that you have before you refers to 3 separate documents, one of them being our use policy. Mm-hmm. And in that use policy, it speaks to that very thing. Anytime that a UAS is deployed, it's going to be attached to an incident. Therefore, we'll have an incident number, have an address attached to it, all of those things. And as we publish that incident, as we normally do, then that flight of the UAS will be attached to that incident, just as we would any other LAFD resource, to make sure that it's public and that we have logs of it.
Yeah, which is supportive of that. That sounds right. I think what I'm referring to is who is the ultimate check on those logs. And so that's where I see potentially the independent assessor actually having a role in being a really credible check on, to be able to just review the logs and say, great, well, these logs tied to incidents. If they weren't tied to an incident and they were tied to something else, you know, if we were flying it here, what happened to that tape? Oh, it went to the CLO's office. Okay, does it have a legitimate purpose? If not, was it destroyed? So I think as someone to kind of have a check on the implementation, execution of that policy, I think that's something we should explore. Again, from the perspective of, I think we all know that this is it's a new thing, it's a high-profile thing, and I think there is potential discomfort with it. My interest in sort of bringing these things up is to say, look, how do we have a credible set of checks here so that we can do what we want to do here, which is use these completely appropriately. So that would be my suggestion. Yeah.
So my suggestion is to shortcut a lot of this stuff. I think you should just invite comments from like the ACLU, because a lot of this stuff is really complicated about like when something is public and we can keep it. We can keep footage, and when we're invading somebody's privacy. And this stuff changes all the time. The law about this changes all the time. So I would just invite them for comment. We don't need to take all the recommendations, but a lot of the stuff they do for a living is just sort of figure out when new technology comes in, how the privacy laws apply, and when we want to keep these logs, because we probably want to keep the logs regarding the flight path. We may not necessarily want to keep the logs regarding like everything we view, unless it's related to something, to an investigation that we have going or something like that, But there's very specific rules in the law that already apply. And there's people who just do this for a living. So let's, instead of like wasting a lot of time coming back here and trying to figure it out, let's just get them to give us an opinion about what they think, and also like confer with city attorney's office about it as well.
And that's exactly what we've done in this process. As late as 2 days ago, talking with Ms. Kelly at the city attorney's office about how we handle material.
So the additional thing that I would say is just invite the ACLU to submit an opinion about this. Like because they know that we're going to be using it. And, a lot of departments are going to be using it. So what would they recommend in terms of like what kind of footage we keep and how we keep it and what kind of checks and balances? They're going to say that they want a civilian panel to make the ultimate decision, and that would be us, except that we probably don't. We meet twice a month. We can't do that. So it makes sense that it would be the independent assessor, and if not the independent assessor, who else? But this is the kind of stuff that they think about all the time.
Oh, I'd like to just commend Chief Fields on this report. And
it was very thorough.
It's very thorough, and I am really happy to see the department move in this direction because of safety again. It's a big issue for me that we do everything we can to keep our staff, our firefighters, safe. And I'm happy to see that a part of this includes an education piece, because I know that the public is very leery of these flying objects, drones. We hear about it all the time. And we hear a lot about that. So I'm glad to see that there's a whole section on how you will educate and bring the public into the play of this particular instrument being introduced by the fire department, because it's very important to always keep the public interest in mind and let them know what you're doing. And I see you have it all outlined there. Thank you.
So would you suggest that we let them come back with some additional information before we approve it, or do you want to approve it with the additional recommendation that they...
Well, I want to move forward with it, but I do with the additional recommendations.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we should move forward with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our additional recommendations are to confer with the ACLU proactively.
Right. And so invite them to submit a written opinion. Invite the ACLU to submit a written opinion. And
then explore a role for the independent assessor as a check, as a final check on the use within policy.
Because if necessary, there's always room for amendments.
Of course, yeah. And I would say maybe even though we want you to move forward and start the process of applying for your waivers, I think it's worth coming back to us again after you do those things, and let us then look at kind of a part 2 iteration of this. That makes sense.
Well, if I can offer you guys are going to get tired of us with this, because this is just the first conversation.
Oh yeah.
When it comes to the UAS, and we intend to have as many eyes that want to look at our policy, look at our practice or the proposal of our practice, so that everyone is comfortable with it. This is an amazing tool, but we don't want people, as Commissioner Woods-Gray mentioned, to be leery of this tool. So we intend to have regular and open communications with everyone who wants to be involved to make sure that we're covering all the bases.
Very good. And then also, as part of your review, just considering this on the archiving of the footage of the getting more specific about what footage we keep and what we destroy, that may be part of the conversation with the ACLU. But let's consider that too. So why don't we adopt I'll move to adopt the report as amended with the recommendations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So 5D, report by the Department of Fire Prevention Inspections, is going to be continued. So, and then 5E was on the consent agenda calendar. So 5F is report by the department on the fire stat section status report on tiered fire stat meetings.
Good morning, Madam President, Fire Commissioners,
Good morning.
Chief Terrazas, City Attorney Isela, Battalion Chief Jamie Moore, Fire Stat LA Section Commander. I'm also joined by two of my colleagues, our analysts, Sun Tet and Anthony Guerrero. Ms. Drew Steinberg, our manager in the Fire Stat Section, is unable to join us today, as she and her husband are celebrating the birth of their son, who was born yesterday.
My God.
At 5:49 p.m. Both Drew and her son are doing fantastic.
That's great.
They're recovering at UCLA Hospital and enjoying their first days together. You should have an attachment with that, what we provided, data trends, graphs, and associated heat maps. For the interest of time, don't worry, I'm not going to go over every single one of those graphs or every one of those heat maps, but I will give you a comprehensive summary of what we're doing in FireStat as part of this update. In 2017, the department continued implementing the performance management process by introducing what we call tiered FireStat. This tiered process is designed to promote communication through the ranks with the goal of expanding the department's engagement on all levels. Since the implementation of this tiered process, the department has held FireStat inspection meetings for Quarter 1 and Quarter 2 in all 4 geographic bureaus on 2 of the 3 platoons. FireStat inspection meetings are scheduled to begin in that 3rd platoon this month, the month of June. Additionally, FireStat inspection meetings have been held in various bureaus, sections, and units within the administrative operations. FireStat is working on all levels to establish a foundation of performance management that improves the department's efficiency and its effectiveness. And that was mentioned earlier by our new Fire Marshal, Deputy Chief Crowley, and how FireStat has shown how much work they've done in the Fire Prevention Bureau. The FireStat section also acts as the stewards of data for the department, serving both internal and external requests for information and data reports. To manage the performance of members in the field, the FireStat section has created online dashboards which allow field personnel to observe their performance in a number of areas. The dashboard visualizes and quantifies metrics such as their turnout time, their travel time, their composite operational response time. And let me refer to that as CORT. CORT is actually their turnout time and travel time added together. Frequent automatic alarm locations and EMS call generators, and we've had a direct impact on lowering the number of automatic alarms decreasing the cost to our businesses out there who are having these alarm system problems. And we've been working with the EMS Bureau to assist our call generators by giving them outside agencies that can help our patients so that they don't have to call 911 and they can get help that they were not aware that could be provided to them. All these metrics can be seen starting from 2013 to the current date. The data can be analyzed by platoon, separated by bureau, battalion, station, and even up to their unit. These dashboards are available to all members via a link on the LAFD internal web portal. FireStat actively works with sworn members to regularly improve and update these dashboards. The goal is to increase accountability and to promote ownership within the field. FireStat is constantly working to improve accessibility of this data. The graphs that you have before you will help visualize the number of incidents and response times that the LAFD has responded to since calendar year 2013. The graphs will help identify trends that the department has observed over the last 3 years since FireStat process began, included our incident counts, turnout time, travel time, and as I mentioned earlier, court time. These metrics are available citywide for geographic bureau and have been isolated by battalion. The metrics have been analyzed for EMS incidents, non-EMS incidents, and total incidents to which department responded. Included our citywide heat maps, which indicate the incident counts for EMS, non-EMS, and total incidents for each calendar year beginning in 2013 and ending in 2016. As an overview, you will see that we have had a steady increase in the number of incidents that we responded to over the past 4.5 years. The graph will show you that we have increased from 89,317 incidents to 116,570 incidents. This is an increase of about 30% since 2013. With the implementation of our tiered dispatch system, we have shown major improvements in our average call processing time. This has allowed our dispatchers to process the calls quicker and enabled us to get the resources dispatched sooner. Overall, our turnout time has decreased by about 10 seconds, while our travel time has increased, unfortunately, by about 30 seconds. But this increase in time can be attributed to a number of reasons, things like traffic congestion in the city, new construction, road conditions, and we're looking at other reasons why this might be occurring. In our efforts to obtain the most accurate data, the FireStat section developed what we call composite operational response time, or CORT, as I mentioned earlier. That measurement allows us to measure the time of the dispatch to the time the first unit arrives on scene. This measurement was developed in order to summarize operational response time in a manner that we can control, allowing us to measure the efficiency of our responses. So our unit commanders can actually look to see how their units are performing. All of this information is available to the public by visiting our public-facing website. Interested members of the community can go to www.lafd.org. All they have to do is click on FireStat LA, and they can see response time in their zip code area or their area of the community that they're interested in. The entire city is included on that data. The website will, if you look at it for EMS calls, the website will identify the average call processing time for an EMS call is 1 minute, 2 seconds. Average LAFD turnout time is 58 seconds. Our average LAFD travel time is 4 minutes and 27 seconds. And our operational response time for an EMS call is 6 minutes and 36 seconds. Operational response time is a time interval that starts when the first contact is made, not necessarily by LAFD, but it can either be through a 911 dispatcher or through our LAFD Metro Fire Communications, and it ends when that first standard unit arrives on scene. FireStat continues to evolve through its implementation of performance management as well as through its roles as stewards of the department in processing the data that was created. With FireStat and the establishment of metrics, the department is able to analyze its effectiveness, efficiency in all levels. And as you mentioned earlier in your discussion with standards of cover, it is not uncommon to get the requests from the various bureau commanders, the fire chief, or other sections of this department requesting data as to how they can analyze the different metrics being performed by their personnel in order to improve. We've used the data that FireStat has provided in our decision-making process when we were formulating the budget requests and also the placement of resources. I am available for any questions you may have.
Good morning. Just a question about the meetings for the training. You've trained bureaus on 2 of the 3 platoons, and is there a schedule to train the others?
Ma'am, it's not a
meet with them.
It's not an actual training. What we do in the fire stats section is we prepare the data that for that quarter, and we compare it to either the past quarter or previous quarter, and we work with the various bureau commanders to put that what is a PowerPoint slide presentation together. The bureau commander is then the lead of the meeting. Fire stat facilitates the meeting, and what it is a report back by the battalion chiefs. So when we talk about this tiered dispatch, what happened was we sat down with the fire chief and we asked, what areas would you like us to address in performance management? And it's areas not just that don't just hit our call processing time, our turnout time, and our travel time. There are other areas that it involves as well. For instance, if we have a concern for accidents, we can look at how many accidents have occurred in that specific bureau. If we have a increase in a need for training in a certain area, for instance, certifications with the number of young members that we have that are now out in the field, and they need to be certified to tiller or to be able to act as an engineer, act as an apparatus operator. The bureau commander can then bring it to the chief deputy's attention. The chief deputy then brings it to the fire chief's attention. That was one of the things that we started highlighting. So when we have these meetings, they're actual report backs by the battalion commanders to the bureau commander, identifying what the need was, what the bench measurement was, and what they've done to either achieve that measurement or what they're doing to make sure that it's accomplished.
That was one of the things I appreciated about attending the fire stat meeting, was that I noticed that lots of information was shared by the people in the room, and I thought that was quite valuable.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Are the fire stats meetings still being held on the 2nd floor?
Well, we've made a few changes in order to accommodate the bureau commanders and their requests. So, as I mentioned, the tiered dispatch, or I'm sorry, the tiered fire stat meetings, it went from the top down and from the bottom up. And we really did listen. And I always tell, whenever I go to a fire stat meeting, I tell them, think of me as a consultant. What can we do to better serve you? So one of the requests we had by the bureau commanders was it was very difficult to get their battalion commanders and move them all over to the Frank Hotchkin Memorial Training Center, because it pulled, especially if you're looking at South Bureau or you're looking at Valley Bureau, you're really pulling your resources away from areas that they might be needed. So what we've done, we've taken our show on the road, if you want to say. We actually go down to areas that they've identified in their bureau. They meet within their bureau, and so for Valley Bureau, we're meeting at Fire Station at the Valley Bureau headquarters. For Central Bureau, we're meeting at Frank Hotchkiss Memorial Training Center. For West Bureau, we're meeting at their headquarters, and South Bureau as well. So we kind of take everything on the road. It's easier for them, and if it makes the meetings a little more streamlined.
Oh, good. I'll have to get the schedule because I'd like to attend.
Absolutely, we'd love to have you there.
Not on the 2nd floor.
Yeah, no, we'll make sure that you can get to the meeting.
Thanks.
Thanks for all the various charts in here. I'm curious, just from your perspective, what trends did you think were most interesting in all this?
Well, one of the most recent trends that I've been talking to Chief Poyer about was we've seen a steady increase in the number of calls that we're taking. Significant, as I said, from 2013 to present, you got just about 30% increase in number of calls that we're going out on. What I found interesting was the number of transports, and one of the things we're going to start looking at is where are those transports originating and why, because the number of transports aren't correlating with the number of calls that we're getting. So there's got to be a reason why it's happening, and that might be the level of calls that they are, and that could then affect our decision making on what type of resources we put out, ALS versus BLS. It could also determine whether or not, if they're not being transported, do you need an ambulance there, or do you need a fire engine or a light force to be able to go out and assess those patients, or a BLS ambulance, or, as the fire chief has already and EMS Bureau have worked diligently to put out assessment units like our rapid response unit or our nurse practitioner units. These are all solutions that are so unique to the Los Angeles Fire Department. I'm getting phone calls on a regular basis asking about how did we do this? What made us make that decision? How is it working? Because people are so interested in how innovative our department has become because we're looking at things from a out-of-the-box view. and we're addressing the issues that we're facing with unique solutions.
I'm curious on the when you have units that are crossing bureaus, how are those accounted for in your travel time? Are those, would you assign that that unit travel time to the bureau to which they're responding, or would that information be captured in the travel time within the bureau it came from?
Well, keep in mind the travel time is for the unit itself. So what we look at is from its starting location, because when this data that we use for the fire stat for the individual resource, its starting point would be the fire station, because that we have to have one constant starting point. So it would start at the fire station, and then the travel time would be where it ends up. So one of the things that we do take into consideration when we're looking at, for instance, the placement of resource or the need of resources, is we look at call volume. We also look at response times in that area. But then we also look at how does the calls that they're getting affect the resources in that district. For instance, Engine 9. I have this discussion all the time with members of Fire Station 9. They said, that the reason they got Engine 9 back was because of the call volume in Engine 9. Well, that's true. And you could probably add 2 more fire engines in 9's first in, or 3 more ambulances in 9's first in. And I guarantee they'll be busy. But what it really impacted was not just Engine 9 and what's happening in that district, but it saved all the other surrounding companies from having to leave their district and go into 9's first in. And when you do that, you're leaving Fire Station 4 protected. You're leaving Fire Station 14 protected, 17's protected, but yet you're servicing 9's. And that's what's most important here, is what is the ultimate value of that resource?
I totally agree. So just try to ask my question a different way. So let's say you have an incident in West Bureau and you're dispatching from South Bureau. Let's say it takes that unit 15 minutes to get across Bureau time. Would we see that travel time impacting the averages of travel time in South Division, or would we see that impacting the averages in, South Bureau or West Bureau?
What you're going to have is an outlier. That would be an outlier because of the length of time it's taking. So we have to have parameters to have realistic perspective on those resources. And so we eliminate we've in place certain outliers so that we know if it's going out of its district that it may be impacting their travel time. So in something like that instance, it would be an outlier and it wouldn't be counted against either one of them. We're looking at realistic times within their district, but what we would count for it is that the resource in that district isn't providing the service within its own district, within its own bureau.
When we talk about outliers, what is the standard deviation away from the mean that you guys use as your
I'm going to
outlier?
let Sun answer that one. Sun, the standard deviation for outliers?
How many standard deviations away from the mean are you using to determine an outlier? Depends on the metric. Okay, that's a question for Dr. Ishida when he comes.
And we'll be able to discuss that with Dr. Ishida.
Yeah, I just.
I'm sorry I couldn't answer it. I have a master's degree in public administration, not statistics. I'm
I
sorry.
see what your answer is going to be, Chief. I was kind of curious.
I appreciate the effort.
That was tapping back into my bachelor's degree, and I don't remember my.
Yeah, so we can certainly get into that. I think the reason I'm asking is I believe we may have bureau crossovers more often than we'd like to admit. It's hard to get any visibility into that in the way these numbers are constructed. But that's why I'm curious about where we are establishing the outliers, because where we may have established the outliers 3 years ago, to put a fine point on what you said earlier, is we've had a 30% increase since 2013. So what may have been an outlier in 2013 when Dr. Ishida first helped us think about what outliers look like may not still be an outlier anymore. As we've gotten significantly busier, and we may be seeing more bureau-level crossovers than we'd like. So that's certainly a question that I'm interested in exploring further.
Absolutely.
To see, just to make sure that we are truly getting the picture that we want to see, and that we're counting travel time accurately. So that's a question.
Something to keep in mind is we're still on target with AVL, and that will also help us with our travel time analysis.
Yeah.
It will be significant in helping us with analyzing travel time.
Yeah. Okay. You talked about reasons for increasing in travel time. You mentioned road conditions and weather, things like that. Is it possible that there's an increase in travel time as a result of crossovers?
Yes. I'd have to pull the data specifically on how often we're getting those large response times. In other words, I'd look at the resource, where it's coming from, where it's going. Is it crossing over from one bureau to another? And then I'd have to do a count on those.
If I could weigh in on that one, the San Diego Standards of Cover report found that increased traffic was a direct correlation to increased response times. To answer your question, the longer we stay on an incident, the more likely that we'll get another resource for the subsequent incident coming from a farther distance, which could increase the number of cross-ins.
Okay. All right. Lots more to mine here. I think we're a little bit time limited here. So why don't we go ahead? Thank you. That's all I've got. I'll go ahead and move to adopt the recommendation for item 5F.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So that actually concludes our regular meeting. We
need to adjourn our regular meeting before we move to the special,
yes.
I think. Move to adjourn the regular meeting.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So then now we convene our special meeting. June 6th. It was supposed to start at 10:30. It's now 11:30 on June 6th. Our special meeting. We only have one item. It has to do with the report by the department on agreement with Areth Medical Services for temporary pharmacist services.
Dr. X, he's doing it? Okay.
Hello again, everybody. Thank you for hearing this item last minute. As you know, our department carries controlled medications on our paramedic mobile intensive care units as required by the County of Los Angeles EMS agency. Previously, these medications were supplied by county pharmacies and county pharmacists. The county pharmacies notified us late last year, that they would no longer supply us controlled medications as of July 1st of this year. Subsequently, we've been developing a plan to purchase, procure, store, and distribute controlled medications internally. And then that plan involves two parts. One is the purchasing of automated dispensing machines, also known as Pyxis machines. And these are fully automated machines that just about every hospital in this country uses. It's controlled by biometrics. It's very secure, and it minimizes any chance of a diversion, incorrect count, or any other medication reconciliation problems. The other component of this plan requires a part-time pharmacist to take personal delivery of the medications from the vendor, put the medications in a central safe at our medical supply, at our supply and maintenance office, and then go out and resupply 5 regionally located Pyxis machines. The EMS captains would then go ahead and access the medications based on patient use, and then supply the paramedics with the end users. The pharmacist is a necessary component to make sure that we're complying with all state and federal, particularly DEA standards and other regulatory agencies. We anticipate this would be a 0.5 FTE for the from July 1, actually middle of June of this year until the end of this calendar year. Then we'll reevaluate the need in terms of moving forward, whether we have a city employee do this or continue to contract out. And we'll also have a better idea of the number of hours this individual will be required to fulfill his or her responsibilities.
Do you mean a city employee to do what the pharmacist does?
Yes, ma'am. Currently, we need to contract this out because we have to go live with this in the next 2 weeks. We have to be able to procure our own controlled medications before July 1. So in the interim, the contract is for Azareth, which is a local pharmacist registry, and they can supply a part-time pharmacist who knows all the regulatory issues, so we're in full compliance with the Drug Enforcement Agency.
But you were saying you would evaluate whether or not you could use a city employee in the future?
That's correct, ma'am.
And what city employees would be qualified to do that?
It would have to be a licensed pharmacist.
Oh, do we have those in the city?
It's a civil service classification. My understanding, they're currently none employed by the city at this time.
Oh, but it's a position that could be filled.
That's my understanding, correct.
Oh, okay.
Okay, move to adopt the recommendation, item 1A.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.